Hi dear, today we'll start a new chapter, chapter 9, Heredity and Evolution in Biology. Okay, so we have only heredity for the exam. Okay, so we'll see in detail about that. Today we'll see about the basic terminologies involved in this. Okay, so first one is genetics. What does mean by genetics? It is a branch of biology which deals with the study of heredity and variation. Okay, so we are going to study about the heredity and variation in this chapter, and these deals whatever which deals with the heredity and variation, we'll call it as genetics. Okay, it is a branch of biology. Genetics is a branch of biology which deals with the heredity and variation. Okay, so what is meant by heredity? Heredity it is a transmission of characters. Or traits from one generation to the next generation. That means transmission of characters from parents to the offspring. Okay, that is called heredity. Next, what is meant by variation? The difference in the characteristics, the difference in the characters or traits between the parent and the offspring. Okay, so we studied about the variation in the last chapter, right? So the difference in the characters between the parent and the offspring is called variation. Okay, so what are the types of variation we have? We have two types of variations. Okay, we have genetic variation as well as the somatic variation. Okay, somatic variation means the variation takes place in the somatic cells. That means other than the reproductive cells, we will call it as somatic cells. Okay, so that is changes happen in the body cells other than the reproductive cells is called somatic variation, and changes takes place in the reproductive cells is called gametic variation. Okay, so variation takes place in the body cell is called somatic variation, whereas variation takes place in the reproductive cell is called gametic variation. Okay, this whatever the changes that takes place in the body cell, that is never inherited or transmitted. Okay, these kinds of changes cannot be transmitted from parents to the offspring. Okay, and here gametic variation, it is inherited and transmitted to the offspring. Okay, we'll call this as somatic variation as acquired inherited traits. Okay, it is acquired during their lifespan. For example, if I start learning dancing means then that is my acquired skill. Okay, that will not be transmitted to my offspring. Okay, that is a skill I have acquired during my lifespan. Okay, that will not be transmitted to my offspring. Okay, and in case of gametic variation, it is also known as traits. Okay, gametic variation simply we'll call as traits. Okay, example, development of muscles or skills are some of the examples of somatic variation. Okay, here it is height of the parent or skin color or some of the examples. Okay, these skin color or height of the parents may be transmitted from parent to the offspring. Okay, these are the two variation we have seen. Okay, next one. So accumulation of variation, you know that these accumulation of variation only leads to evolution, right? So accumulation of variation during reproduction. Okay, the inheritance from previous generation provides both a common basic body design and subtle changes in it. Okay, for the first one generation to another, only we can see only subtle changes, small changes. Okay, even we are not able to notice that. Okay, that much of changes only will takes place for the next generation. Okay, inheritance transmission of the previous generation provides both basic body design as well as some of the changes. Okay, in which reproduction the changes are more, variations are more. In asexual reproduction, we know that the variations are very fewer, very small. Okay, because why the variation happens? It occurs due to the small inaccuracy in DNA copy. While copying the DNA, some because it is a chemical reaction, right? So some of the error may occur. Okay, so these variations are due to this error only. So the variation is very fewer. Okay, in case of sexual reproduction, variations are very large. Why? Because it's occurred due to crossing over of two different separate chromosomes, two separate DNA, right? So from the male and female we have two different, totally different things, and they are crossing over, so we will get the large variation. Okay, that is not due to the error, that is due to the crossing of two different genes. Okay, so the accumulation of variation is more due to the sexual reproduction and very less due to the asexual reproduction. Okay, so what are the importance of variation? Last chapter itself we have studied. Once again we will go through this. Okay, importance of variation. Depending upon the nature of the variation, different individuals would have different kind of disadvantages. Okay, individuals will have based on the variation it will have advantage. For example, bacteria that can withstand heat will survive better in a heat wave. If the temperature changes, if the environment is totally become very hot, means then the bacteria which can with the variation to withstand the heat can survive in that environment. Okay, so it's an added advantage for the individual as well as for the species itself. Okay, main advantage of variation to species is that it increases the chance of its survival in a changing environment. The environment is not permanent and it is not constant, right? So it is changing time to time, it is changing. Even within a second it can change. Okay, so it is the main advantage of variation is to the species only, because for some of the individuals it may not be an advantage, right? It may be disadvantage, it may be disadvantage for the individual, but for the species is definitely it is an advantage, because it increases the chance of survival in the changing environment. Okay, next, some of the points and terminologies we should know before studying this, going to this lesson. Okay, so points to remember. Sexually reproducing individuals have two copies of genes for the same traits. Traits means you know that it is a character. It is a character. Okay, for example, height. We'll take this height. Okay, take height is a character. Okay, in the sexually reproducing, two different genes are DNA are copying, right, crossing each other. Okay, so we will have for the height, for example, your mom is very short, your dad is very tall, so you will have for the character of height you will have two different traits. Okay, so sexually reproducing individual, two copies of genes for the same traits, two copies of genes, one from your mom and one from your dad, right? These are the two copies of genes for the same traits. Trait means for this character you will have two different genes. Okay, so what is the traits? Already we are seeing traits are the characteristic feature of an organism manifested in a physical form that is visible or in a physiological aspect of the organism. That is the characters, that is visible character of the organism, that we will call it as traits. Okay, dominant traits. Dominant traits means what? Dominant, it's the name itself indicates it's going to dominate. Okay, the traits that express themselves in an organism in every possible combination can be seen. Okay, for every possible combination. For example, your father is a tallest person and your mother is very short, means this for example, the traits that express, if you are tall means then your tallest, this your dad trait is dominating. Okay, the trait that express themselves in an organism. You are very tall means it is expressing, where we are able to see the visible character, right? So you are very tall, that means that is dominating trait. The trait that express themselves in an organism in every possible combination and can be seen or called dominant traits. Okay, the traits which are not expressed in the presence of a dominant cell. In the presence of a dominant trait, your mom's trait, the small heights, short one will not be expressed, right? So that is called recessive traits. Okay, next, what is gene? Gene already we have studied in the last chapter. Is a basic unit of inheritance. It consists of sequence of DNA, which is the genetic material. Genes can mutate and can take two or more alternative forms. Okay, it can be available, it can mutate, it can change into, or it can take any of the form, alternative forms. Okay, that one of the alternative form is called alleles. Okay, gene can mutate and can take two or more alternative forms. Okay, some of the alternative forms genes are available in other forms also. What is that? Alleles. Okay, alleles. The alternative form of genes is called alleles. Okay, they affect the same characteristics or traits in a alternative forms. They are located on the same place on the chromosome. Okay, in the same place it is also located. Okay, it they affect the same characteristics or traits in the alternative forms. Okay, allele is nothing but the alternative form of the genes. Okay, homozygous. Homo means the name in itself, it indicates it is same, right? Each organism has two alleles for every gene. I told you that for every gene you will have two copies, right? So in the alternative form it is present, that is called allele. Each organism have two alleles for every gene. In homozygous, both the alleles are same. Homozygous type means both the alleles are same. For example, for height, take this capital T is the homozygous expression for the tallness trait. Okay, because both the traits are same one, capital T. That is called homozygous. Heterozygous means hetero itself means different, right? If two alleles are different from each other, then they are heterozygous in nature. That means capital T and small t. For the height, for the character height, both the alleles are different. One is very tall, one is small t. It is a heterozygous expression of tallness traits. Okay. Next one, genotype and phenotype. Okay, genotype is nothing but the genetic constitution of the organism. Okay, it is a complete heritable genetic identity of an organism. It is a set of alleles. Set of alleles means it includes both the alleles. Okay, for each gene you have two copies, right? It is a set of alleles that are carried by the organism. It also includes non-expressed alleles. Okay, dominant alleles will express. We can see the physical form in the visible form, right? It also includes the short form also. Recessive allele traits will also be there. Okay, but it is not visible. Together we'll call it as genotype. Okay, everything together we'll call it as genotype. Whichever is expressible or visible to us, then we will call it as phenotype. Phenotype, it is the description of the actual physical characteristics of an organism or expressed form of the genotype. We said genotype contains both this dominant as well as recessive, right? Whichever is dominant, that is expressed in the organism, right? That expressive form of the genotype is called phenotype. Okay, so I hope you understand few terms related to this heredity and variation, and we'll see the laws of inheritance given by the Mandels in the next class. Okay, thank you.